Welcome back to the Happiness on Tap podcast, where we pour out conversations that inspire, heal, and empower. I'm your host, Leanne, and today we're diving deep into the mystical and healing realms with an incredible guest. He's a modern Vedic astrologer, a spiritual seeker with over 30 years of wisdom, and a healer of both the soul and astral wounds. Please welcome Kris Sage, a Vedic Astro Heal, to the show. Thank you, Kris.
Thank you so much.
I am so
My
excited
pleasure to be
for this
here.
conversation. We're so excited to have you. Your journey is fascinating, starting at just 16 with guidance from a pagan Blackfoot Indigenous shaman. You've since dedicated decades to spiritual studies, astrology, and healing practices. So let's just jump right in. Kris, can you take us back to where it all began? What was it like at 16 being handed spiritual teachings like astrology, Theosophy, and Hermetics? How did those formative years shape your past?
It was a big departure from what I thought was going in my life. Kris, my teacher, he broke my mind. He took away my fear of death and he inserted instead so much information, including Franz Bardon's Hermetics, specifically the Initiation to Hermetics book, and gave me for my birthday these hefty volumes here that I did make it through somehow during my college days. And these were formulative. They sort of set me apart and with the knowledge that I had, and it made me feel somewhat alone in a crowd. And I was definitely not ready at age 16 to take on this as well as the other tasks of life, having an apartment, going to school, and all the other fun things of life. But he taught me so many things, including that silence is power. You don't speak about what you know. And this is a good one from back in the day that helped you to keep your head as well as your power intact. And he also taught me not to throw my pearls before swine, to make a slight biblical reference, to not give away the information that I know because they're not ready for it. And frankly, neither was I. But it was through a path of self-healing and mastery, through the Hermetics and other pathways, that I became more capable, but I kept on running into problems. Things weren't working that well because I had to have the path of self-healing. And that's where astrology comes in, although much later. Although my teacher did give me astrology, he was writing a book on it for at the time that I knew him, and it was just a bit too much on top of the other things. But 30 years later, after following up on these things and many other things, including the great work, which we'll talk about in a minute, the great the path led me to becoming a wounded healer, a person who has overcome their challenges and obstacles in life through luck and grit, which is a way to describe a hero, which is a way that I now, long later, now begin to describe myself. And I'm willing and more so capable of helping others in the same way.
I love it. All of that hit on so many different things that resonated with me personally. I love the hero's journey, the hero's story. That's what
Yes.
usually draws me to get to know people on a much deeper level, because we all have a story.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talked about how you now use that and that knowledge and your years of experience to help others heal, which,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm trying to do, what most healers are trying to do.
Yeah.
And we have to share our struggles, our stumbles, our failures, our growth, so
We have to be
that
truthful about it.
be truthful about it, so that we're authentic and people can receive us that way. And
Hmm.
that helps them be vulnerable and share their story to help
Yeah.
them heal. So I think it's beautiful what you do. And I very much so enjoyed my reading.
Yeah, we're gonna have to meet again to talk about your reading and to show some of the highlights and what's frankly possible because most people don't know what astrology is for. And it's frankly for anything in life. And my particular angle on it is healing, is actually looking at the psychology of the person, pointing out here is what it looks like when it's working. Here's what you're doing in your life. But here's what you can do, these remedies that can make that better. And by removing some of the obstacles in your life, like, removing the mote from your eye, you see better, you're more capable, and you're more able in life.
Yeah, I think that actually just went into my next question, and we'll go a little bit deeper. Um,
Go.
you've studied astrology for over 7 years and blended it with ancient and modern spiritual systems. What makes Vedic astrology unique? And how can it guide someone seeking clarity and healing in their life?
Well, first of all, let me just say that astrology technically doesn't exist. The true astrology from the Vedas is the identities, and my teacher, Ernst Wilhelm, which I give full credit to the wonderful man for his fierce determination to produce reproducible results, researching techniques across hundreds of charts. He built his own software with his very talented wife as the programmer, and read himself the books in Sanskrit. He taught himself and read those things. And it's through that foundation that I focused on, because you can go with financial astrology, you can do the compatibility, which I definitely do have skills in that. But more importantly, predictive things in astrology, which are great tools in the right place and time. But if you're not, if you're hurting today, doesn't matter when Mr. or Mrs. Right is going to come. Doesn't matter when your money's going to happen, however long that's going to be. You're not feeling good today, which is why I do astrological life coaching using an ancient technique called Logitatia Avashtas, which Sanskrit, don't worry about it. But what it turns out to be is the psychology of a person. And through this little 64 grid box that I'm looking at on my screen, that I would look at a screen, it can tell me where you're succeeding and where you're struggling in life. And I can both applaud you for what you're doing right and also help you point out, you see that hole? You keep falling in that, Yeah, that one right there. You think that you could jump over that? And always, always, we give a remedy that helps to correct the behavior, that helps to make the energies flow in your life so that your life will flow along much easier.
Yeah, I really like that explanation. It helped me kind of understand it a little better. We all have repeating patterns in life,
Yes.
and having somebody that can help us see those patterns as well as provide us the skills and tools to change
And
those.
not only that, I can see what you don't want to say, and I'll say it for you. Hey, look, you're not very consistent. You don't make your bed every day, do you now? Or whatever it happens to be like. You have self-esteem issues. You have this or the other thing going on. I can tell them this without them saying anything. And it's very validating when somebody can say what you're secretly hiding and hoping that nobody notices. But now there's not only a visibility into that, validation of what's going on, but here's a solution. Wonderful.
Love it. Love it. Love it. A key part of your work focuses on healing genetic, generational damage and childhood wounds. Can you explain what this means and how you help clients identify and heal these inherited traumas? Because I am one of those people.
Oh, we're all one of those people. Trust. In some way or somehow, genetic generational damage, which is a mouthful, is a way to describe the things that your grandmother, or even further back in time, the grandmother, the grandfather, the father, the mother, whatever they couldn't handle at the time, and they produce the child at that moment, they kind of hand them this bag that's on fire. And they go, sorry, this I couldn't handle this bag. Hope you do better than me. Now, this may point toward the wisdom of having children later in life when you've figured a few things out. But as it happens, children are very resilient, so are adults. And we do get through these patterns, and they are very much they can be very much inhibiting of life. They can make life very, very difficult. Impossible? Perhaps, sometimes. So it's through identifying these patterns and using different models of understanding, such as parent, adult, child, which is a psychology, modality from psychology, which is really nifty. However, if we apply astrology to this and start looking at the chart to find out where the person is functional as an adult, where they're getting their needs met as a child, the connection, the things that they need to do, their path in life, and that the parental part of them, the strict rules of you should do this or else it's not going to work, or you should never do that or else it's never going to work, should support you getting your needs met and achieving the goal, your particular life path, your dharma, the goal of your inspiration in life. This is what a functional human looks like, or at least a part of it. And it's through this modality that I'm starting to see the charts. I'm taking a class right now from my esteemed teacher, and he is teaching me how to see this so that I can identify where in your childhood, what age, and how that was, and if it was really damaging, creating, quote, separation wounds in the small child of 0 to 3 years old. When you do a separation wound to such a young, undeveloped creature, it causes certain fractures in a person. And then later, maybe years and years and years, 50, 60, 30, 20 years later, the pressures of life begin to push on you. And those without fractures, it's pressure, and they plow through it. Their college midterm exams or whatever is going on. They manage to plow through that, even though if their relationship is just going to hell in a handbasket. They manage to plow through it because they don't have these inherent fractures. However, and all of us have this, by the way. However, when you have fractures of these separation wounds as a child between the years of 0 to 3, you have a crack in that otherwise crystalline structure. So when the pressures of life happen at age 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, you crack. And you get triggered into some old, childish, or maybe even strict parental behavior. It certainly couldn't be called adult. And then you operate in this, and you may be triggered again before you get out of that. And it may lead to a whole cycle, decades, of patterns of, we'll call it unproductivity. But it's through the Logitariavashtas, the psychology of astrology, aka astrological life coaching, that we can notice these things, that we can address these things and get them out of the way of you developing in the methodology and the path that you are supposed to, which each person has their individual path. And it's made more difficult with these genetic generational damages, these patterns that we have inherited from our parents, either genetically or through indoctrination is not the best word, but how you learn as a child in that family environment.
I can definitely attest to all of that and wish that at some point earlier in my life, I had a glimmer of understanding that these things could happen. I mean, I know my childhood. I know where that fracture was, but those trauma triggers didn't happen until I was in my mid 40s.
Until the pressure of life hits you. I've heard of somebody who was 60 before they finally succumbed to whatever the pressure of life was at that time. They had a pretty good life until that moment when things got really spicy.
Yeah. Well, I won't claim I had a really good life or a pretty good life, but I was like you described. I was able to just push it down and keep on rolling until I couldn't. And then I thought I had lost my resilience. And so I was
And
like,
now you're finding that resilience.
what happened? And that's exactly why I named my business the way I named my business, was because I really thought I had lost it. I couldn't see it. It was cloudy. It was gone. It was missing in my life.
Yeah.
It was so out of my normal, but I didn't have anyone to kind of help me get through, understand those things, figure out where
Yep.
they came from. So that was, I wish I had somebody with that knowledge, because I
I
was
think
learning
you're
it.
definitely speaking for the audience, many audience members right now, and for me. Yeah, I wish I had learned this a long time ago. But when I learned Logitati Avashtas, aka the psychology of how a person feels, game changing, game changing. One of the first people that I tested this material on, because I always test everything, and you're not going to hear about the ones that don't work. But in any case, I tested on this one lady who had just started going to therapy sessions. She had gone to 2 therapy sessions, and then she had seen me for an extended 2.5 hour reading where we really did a deep dive for her. She really appreciated it. And she mentioned that I talked about 5 things of the 6 things that they had brought up in the 2 therapy sessions. I consider that a real win for ancient knowledge and how really wise our ancestors are.
I think for me, the biggest blessing of having someone like you, a coach, someone like me who's been through it, who's learned the tools and the techniques for getting through those things, for understanding those things, is just not to have to do it alone.
You get
That's
to speed it up. You get to put it into high gear and put the gas down on life, and it does accelerate your life.
It does, absolutely. Working with someone who's gone through it is exactly that. It helps speed up how you get to the other side, or how you get to where you're going.
Your
It saves
goal.
you the time of trying to learn, trying to figure out, trying to understand, trying to, get through the feelings, the emotions. I didn't have anybody, so I learned the hard way myself,
Yes.
doing an inner child meditation. Home Alone went much deeper than I was ready for.
The movie.
And, had I had that help, it would have made that a lot less painful. It would
Yes.
have made it something that didn't hurt so bad.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I also spent a lot of time, me personally, I don't want to say justifying, But, the word forgiveness was always a tough one for me.
Oh, yes.
So instead, I looked at it the way you were kind of talking about, is our generational, what we have inherited from our grandparents and our mother. And, this is just, they gave us what they knew.
Oh, yeah. They did
And
their
that's
best.
how
They did their best.
they did
No,
their
no
best.
shame on grandma. Okay.
And that is honestly how I got over the hate, the
The
anger,
betrayal in
the
my case.
betrayal, was being able to see it from that light and remember, as a child growing up, when I'd get punished, my mother would send me to spend summers with my grandmother.
Oh.
And so when I came back was when I understood my mother a little more. Not that what she was doing was right, but I understood where her behaviors came from.
The root of that tree. Yeah.
The root of that tree. And that really helped in my healing.
hmm And this is, although the details may change, this is a common story. Perhaps the story that we all can share and go, yeah, I got kind of messed over as a kid. Could have been better. And hopefully in my vision of the future, and I am titled by my friend, and I do like this title, so I'm going to slap it on. He who remembers the future. And I remember the future, quote unquote, by looking back to the ancient wisdom because there is nothing new under the sun, just cycles repeating, which is why astrology works. That's why we can predict things. We find out which cycle you are particularly running and where you are on that. And then we can go, oh, hey, it's going to do this. It's actually kind of simple, but it is really useful. Kind of, really it is. Um, but definitely we are in cycles and we are moving forward in a grand cycle called the precession of the equinoxes, or otherwise the great year of the Platonic year, however you want to describe it, of 26,500 years, long time. And we are currently, in some people's opinion, there's a lot of debate as to the numbers, but in some people's opinion, we just entered the Dwarpa Yuga, the Bronze Age, as it were. And we're going to continue for 1,000 years of that and 1,000 years of the Tretya Yuga, the Silver Age, and then we get to the Golden Age. I can't remember the Golden Age, where it's 2,000 years, and it's the Golden Age because we have so much more light shining from internally. Like we, as a race, as a human, I believe, we get more juiced up, more power runs through us. Maybe something changes about the sun. I don't know what happens, but something changes and we get more power. And this is where we talk about these stories of these gods and goddesses and other things running around, these titans and Olympians and all this stuff. Yeah, at one time. Not now. But where we are now is building ourselves up to a new age. We are gearing up for another great mission of society. We succeeded at the last one. We're going to push forward to the new one, and we're going to do good.
Always good to look forward. Your approach is beautifully intuitive, blending healing modalities and remedies, which I love. How do you combine your intuitive abilities with astrological counseling to create personalized guidance for your client? I think we've kind of covered this, but
I want to be more specific about it because
please.
it really is an integral part of a good reading. Just for context, in India, at least in the old days, they called this an astrological reading a Deva Prajna. Deva for meaning God, Prajna for talking to or consulting with. So when you come to see an astrologer, at least in the old days, they considered it you are coming to get the message that God wants you to hear. And how the hell is this guy going to do that if I'm not intuitively connected? And so it's a big part. And here's how it works. Back in the day, I used to do like a lot of homework, like make notes for like 2 or 3 pages of notes. Like, oh, I got to tell them about this. Oh, I got to tell them about this. And I wouldn't even read them during the reading because something else would catch my attention. And like a squirrel or the dog latching on to the new thing, I go with that. Because if something is going sparkle, sparkle, and I'm like, oh, okay, I should talk about that. Yeah, it's a better reading. It's a way better reading. And it kind of developed into what I call my reaction reading, which is the first time that I see the chart is in front of you, as we did, Leanne.
Mhm.
Um, and therefore, these things, it's more or less intuitive at that point, completely. But even when I'm using my AI assistant to help me remember something, I don't read everything it says. I pick out certain points. And based upon what's most salient, how I feel that's more than that. So I'll just talk about the thing that feels more and maybe even ignore the other one entirely, intuitively in the moment, especially during a live reading. That definitely happens. So how do I get there? Because it wasn't always there. Believe me, I was scrambling and reading notes, and I used to joke that it's a reading because I'm going to read a bunch of stuff to you. Sorry. But change that. Well, we do a lot of reading. I have a lot of good notes to share, a lot of knowledge to share. But before each reading, whether on camera with the person or off, I chant. I have my own particular chants, but I also have plenty of other ones from Hindu and Tibetan Buddhism. Om Mani Padme Hung, Om Bu Buva Suvaha Tat Savitur Vinayam Margo Deva Sadimahi Deyoyo Na Parcho Deyot. Those are good ones, certainly, and all the rest, but I have my own particular ones. And I ritually cleanse myself before the reading. I do certain things to prepare myself to get myself into that zone of intuitiveness. And I maintain a squeaky clean lifestyle. Like I don't watch horror movies and I don't drink every so often socially. But otherwise, I live a nice clean life because this helps me to stay in that zone. And it's a heart-centered approach where I literally drop down into my heart to allow for images, ideas, words, mostly images. And then I'm like, okay, cool. I guess I'll try to describe this. And it's actually turned out to be really effective, really on point. The many times, either in a reading or other places, that I have shared the imagery that has appeared to me, it's really on point. And it's surprising for both me and the client when I talk about certain things, when I'm very specific about, oh, I'm so sorry that you had a bad childhood, if that's the case. Usually it's one of two things. I usually look at the chart and go, whoa, look at you. You're amazing. Check this out. Look at it. Look, look, look. Or I'll go, whoa, I'm so sorry. You had a rough time. One or the other. And either way, rough or easy, it's, I don't want to say solvable, but it's definitely something that we can work with, that we can make work in your life so that your life is much more it progresses more easily, as it were.
I can understand that. I absolutely, as if you've seen my on my bookshelf, um,
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of tarot reading. I was never a true intuitive. I think I don't have the bandwidth to remember a lot of
I
information.
developed it.
Over time, it's like a learned skill. So I also call it a reading and say that, yes, I'm going to be reading a lot. But before I do any of that, I do have a grounding ritual. I do
Nice.
certain things to protect myself, to protect my client, to
Mm,
connect heart centered with them for my
very wise.
reading. So I get it. I understand all those valuable things that you do to protect yourself and to protect them and to be able to accept the information that you're receiving.
Yeah.
I kind of call it a download. Sometimes it
Sure.
wakes me up in the middle of the night. Um,
Ugh.
but to be open to accepting those downloads and be able to understand them, and then to be able to communicate them with the person who's sitting across from you. And I've only maybe done one reading with somebody virtually, which I didn't know how it was going to go because I'd never done that. I had always done them in person.
Yeah.
But I was, very pleased to know that it still did what it was supposed to do for that
Yeah.
person.
Distance is no hyphen thing. Time really is no hyphen thing. If somebody watches this 50 years from now, the same energy will hit them that hits the other audience members. And the truth of it will be just as useful and salient for them.
I agree. You mentioned, and I want to make sure we covered it, the great work.
Mm.
So
Mm.
you've dedicated yourself to the great work for over 3 decades.
Mm.
For those of us unfamiliar with that term, what does the great work mean to you? And how can it inspire others in their spiritual path?
Yeah, definitely. Now, when I was first told this thing about the great work, it was kind of course, shrouded in mystery and myth and mythology, which is all the esoteric stuff. And I do consider myself a metaphysician of the esoteric because I have covered many more things than the ones I mentioned here. I have a bookshelf as well, Leanne. I do want to show you sometime. Um, the fact is that the great work typically, traditionally refers to alchemy, which is the progenitor of modern chemistry. Yeah, it is. They don't give no deference to their grandfather, but and I will give this little hint, this little tidbit for those that are perhaps on that particular path. Do check out the PDF from 2010 called The Book of Aquarius. And I strongly suggest you have a grain of salt or three whenever you're reading that book, as you should with any alchemical book. But definitely, it's a great bootstrap device. It's something that you will be able to get a lot out of. And my God, what a treatise! How many quotes from so many obscure places. Book of Aquarius, unknown author. For me, the personal path of the great work has also, additionally, and maybe personally, has meant healing myself. Being raised by a narcissist and a guy who didn't think very well of himself for the things he had to do to survive. Yeah, what do you think the result's going to be? It's going to be kind of messy. And, 2 divorces later, you know, moving 5 times in the last year, things are a little spicy sometimes. But by getting a hold of these things and making things happen, it reduces the effect of these things. And even when it's storming, you can smile. You can learn how to dance in the rain and how to have an attitude of gratitude, which is a whole nother thing we'll talk about another time perhaps, but how that has really helped me, especially recently, but overall. And I will just say, until you're 48, there's still some maturation. There's still some things for you to grow and to learn into. And that is across the board, unless you happen to be running ahead of the crowd. But across the board, that is generic to all of us. Of course, every single chart and every single person has their own cycles, but there are some notable common years that are very, very difficult. And I'll just quickly mention them right here, but we'll have to talk about them and expand them later in our actual reading. But between your birthday to your birthday, your 41st year, 41, your 44th year, 44, or your 47th year, these are really foundational and character building times in your life, and it will be really spicy for some of us, most of us. But as a result of this, you will grow, you will learn, and you can have help if you're going into this time to what to expect and how to get through that more easily and without so much loss, because it's the 40s that we lose the most people to depression and so on. So the path of the wounded warrior, and I definitely was trained as a martial artist by my teacher, is one where we walk the path. And as a result of walking that path, we are able to tell other people who are on a similar path, don't worry, it's going to be rough and it'll take a little bit of time, but this is the way out of that thicket of thorns that you're currently in, or the darkness, or whatever, whatever analogy that you want to have. And I just want to say about the martial arts that I'm proud to say that I'm the last in my Germanic family to engage in any warlike behavior, and that the martial arts that I have is a peaceful defense, and that's all it is. It's meant for those that are for defending.
I like that. I like how you defined your great work as your personal healing, and then how that has enabled you to provide that path for others.
Yep. The
I guess
wounded
I'll have
healer.
to think of my own name for exactly that, because I feel that that's also very much what I do when I'm working with women in transition.
Oh,
Is, I've been through those milestones, as you would call them, I
milestones.
guess. Um, Divorce, infidelity,
Mm.
childhood abuse,
Oh boy.
abandonment, betrayal, and have over time, when I've done the great work, developed skills and tools that have enabled me to now share that information with others to show them, one, it's very possible we can get through it. And to be that guide, to walk
Yeah.
beside them while they're traveling that road.
And to tell them, hey, I don't know, this path over here worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. Of course, you can take your own path, but this one worked for me. And it may be just the medicine that that person needs.
Absolutely. So, for our listeners who may feel called to explore their own spiritual path, healing, what are 3 simple practices or steps they can take today to begin this journey?
3 paths. Well, the most important one, and let's go back to the Oracle of Delphi, man, woman, know thyself. You need to know through any method, including astrology, learn the truth of who you are, and then act in that dharma, that life, that personal life path that is to act in that life path, to express that in your unique way until that becomes your new daily habit and you just become who you were always meant to be. The other, yeah. So another thing that definitely has helped in my path is what's called the Bach Flower essences, which I have in this lovely box here. And one of the most important ones that are present is what's called rescue remedy. And these Bach flower essences are very relatively inexpensive. And especially this one, you can get it for $12 or so, 14, $12 or so at Walmart and other places, Amazon, wherever you shop, whatever, it doesn't matter, your choices. You can get them everywhere, including from Bach Flowers. And they help with the emotional wounds to give a subtle support for the particular um, wounds that we have, the feelings of unworthiness, of unlovability, of feeling intolerant of others' mistakes, of feeling that life lacks zest and you're just dragging yourself along, and so many other of the 38 flavors that are described here. And they're very much pills for emotional ills. They're not pills, but they definitely help for those situations. And I found them incredibly helpful. And they have a limit. Once you have the vibration from these waters in your waters of your body, you don't need them anymore at a certain point until trauma or something else knocks it out of you. And then, well, there they are again. And no, you don't have to get the whole kit unless you want to make custom bottles for how the person is feeling currently and where they are today. Yes, using intuitive, but also techniques. If you don't have to buy the whole kit, although it is somewhat cheaper, they add up. 38 bottles. Um, I do recommend that you get Rescue Remedy and in your medicine cabinet, if only so that you can help your lovely plants, which I have many here. When you're doing a transplant, put the Rescue Remedy into the water that you're going to put onto the plant, and the plant will survive that transplant. If you're having somebody who has shock because of physical trauma, being in a car accident, or maybe even emotional shock, give them some Rescue Remedy in a cup or something else and have them drink that and watch them calm down and suddenly be more capable and able to handle the trauma, the situation, the emergency that's currently going on. It's called Rescue Remedy for a reason. And I guess the third and most maybe an important thing here, and not and somewhat overlooked, hydrate often and bless everything that you ingest. Um, you should really bless everything, but your food especially, and try to maintain the sense of gratitude throughout the day, to the best of your ability. Of course, this is something I personally struggle with, but made a lot of ground with. And but hydration, having enough water in your body, not only is it going to be physically so much better, but every time you have a psychic reading or a massage, having more water flowing through you helps you to process what's going on. So help yourself out. Have a glass of water.
All of those were perfect. Perfect, Kris. Thank you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
they're definitely things that I definitely have a gratitude practice, which really, really helps. Absolutely. I also do use different oils. Do you
Mm.
do custom tinctures as well? If you're like
I
working with
am
somebody specifically?
I am not able to do essential oils and so on, although I definitely have those around. But for a custom mix bottle, oh yeah, we put a number in there, 7, 5, 9, whatever is necessary. And don't worry about it because we all have 20 to 30 or more of these areas that might need some help. So you have a bottle, you take it 4 times a day, 4 drops, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and dinner and lunch. And you can put it into a container of water. You can put it into a big bottle of water and then keep drinking that the whole day. And you're going to be dosing yourself the whole time, putting those vibrations into your water of your body. And once you have that sufficiently in there, you're more easily able to handle the vicissitudes of life, the trials and whatever of life. And you can more easily push through things. Um, it helped me with my stress sweating that I had as a chronic thing for some time. It actually went away for a good long time. Yeah, then something else traumatizing happened and it came back, but I didn't expect that. And there's a lot of cool things the Bach flowers do, but I didn't see that one. It wasn't ever talked about in any of the classes that I took about Bach flower.
Yeah, very interesting. I'll have to do some more research. Is that on your website? The
Not
Bach flower?
currently, although I guess I should be adding it, huh?
That would help. Maybe look into, I don't know, working out something with the company.
Well, perhaps. In any case, I'm not affiliated currently, but I am definitely a big supporter of that. And my website could use a refresh, so we'll make that part of the to-do list.
Yeah, I had help from an herbalist when I
Oh.
was really struggling, and it was
Mm.
amazing at how quickly just a simple cup of tea that she had prepared for me could just bring me right down into
The
calm.
magic of a cup of tea,
Yeah,
of the right
of the
tea.
right cup of
Yeah.
tea. So I spent some time learning from her as well. Um,
Nice.
but
You gotta
you
share
know,
that with me sometime.
it
Next
was
time
very
we have lunch.
powerful for me to help get my nervous system out of
Mm-hmm.
trauma response.
Yeah.
It
Because
was
we
something
definitely
very
work with the energy system, the nervous system, physical system, the emotional system. We got to get all that in alignment before the car can really effectively get in first gear.
absolutely, absolutely. So, Kris, thank you again for sharing your incredible journey, your wisdom. Where can our listeners find you if they want to learn
Uh,
more about modern Vedic astrological? That was a mouthful. Counseling and healing services.
yes, Modern Vedic Astrological Counseling Services through Vedic Astro Heal, which is the business name I've selected, and the website www.astroheal.me.
Wonderful. I will make sure to include all of that information in the show notes so that people can find you. I think what you do is wonderful, and a lot of people
Thank you.
could really use a guide
Thank
and to
you.
know that we don't have to do this alone and that
Oh, we're
knowledge is
not.
our
We're all in this
power.
together.
Knowledge is our power. So thank you again for your time, Kris. I greatly appreciate you coming on the show. I look forward to doing another one with you where we can go into other things in a lot more detail.
Absolutely. Thank you. And
Thank
thank you all.
you. Thank you, everyone.